Hey, Culminators. Thanks for joining me today. I have my good friend, David Reaboi, joining us as well. And this is actually his first time on the show alone with me, which is as good as being alone, if not better. In the past, we were part of the three guys who absolutely do not look the same, with Jeff Balaban. Doesn't look anything like either one of us, except to people who've just never seen people who look like people like us. I mean, am I right? I don't think anyone who knows you would think you were me or vice versa. But whatever.
No, but we look like relatives because it's possible we are.
It's likely we are, I guess. Anything going on in the world, and anything going on in information wars that would be of interest, you think, to our listeners?
Well, now everybody's talking about Ukraine.
Yes,
So we could talk about that, or actually maybe what we can talk about is what's going on in the Middle East today.
Tell me what's going on in the Middle East today.
Specifically, well, maybe not today, but it's the general trend since we've seen the Saudis and the Emiratis sort of go off in the middle of this kind of, let's say, pseudo conflict between Russia and the Biden administration.
That's a tease, folks. That's a tease. We'll be getting back to that.
Yeah. We've been seeing MBS will not take Biden's calls. There's talks about the petrodollar maybe not disappearing, but the Saudis trading in Chinese yuan, and and sort of all this kind of speaks to a realignment of traditional allies in the Middle East, especially when it comes to the Arab world. And this is the necessary consequence of policies that this administration pursued, and really the Obama administration pursued. I mean, we had a small little holiday from history with the Trump administration when it comes to this. I think for all of its faults in some ways, and its inability to do follow through, which I think was the biggest fault. It still pretty much got down the basics, which is that at the end of the day, these alliances that the United States has had for the last several decades are meaningful and they're important. And there's a reason why we've been dealing with the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Egyptians and the Israelis for so long. And there are consequences to abandoning these alliances. And whether it's small little insults, or it's large diplomatic slights and military slights, we've seen a continuation of the Obama administration policy to sort of get rid of these alliances, which in my mind and the mind of many other people looking at the region has been just completely insane.
Stop there.
Yeah.
Because I asked Lee Smith this question and he had kind of an answer, but I haven't really gotten great satisfaction on this. I mean, it's transparently obvious that now through three administrations, like you said, with a slight hiccup after year 8, that Obama and his people have decided that the hegemon to balance out Israel is that another hegemon is necessary to balance out Israel, and that hegemon should be the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, that sounds insane to us for so many reasons, but there must be an animating intelligence, a school of thought out there. Do you have any idea what it could be? Have you ever heard anyone enunciate it rationally?
Well, so this is the thing that makes this all kind of crazy. The best piece on this, and for the motivations behind it, was written probably in 2012, 2013 by Mike Duran at Hudson. and he wrote the kind of the secret Iran deal or something like that, and where he talked about these motivations exactly, which is to rebalance, not specifically Israel as the regional power, but Saudi Arabia. So as to stand up Iran to be a counterweight to Saudi Arabia, and I mean, as you said, this is insane in a myriad number of ways. But the fact that these guys never really spelled out what they want to do in the region, what their vision of the region is for the U.S. and without the U.S. Is, I think, it's really significant, and it's something that that they've been fixated on. Let's say the same cast of characters has been fixated on this realignment, at least since before the Obama administration. So it's 2008. They were setting these things in motion, specifically by the 2008 Obama campaign, bringing on Robert Malley as an advisor, who ended up getting the boot when people found out that he was very close to Hamas. Now, of course, where is he today? Today, he is an important member of the team. So he managed to rehabilitate himself and come back.
Well, they've also constructed a media and messaging system that has insulated the administration from criticism, press inquiry, or second guessing, as well as doing whatever it was they did to get majorities in both houses, so that even somewhat rehabilitation is simply a matter of being appointed, because there's no one to justify anyone. I mean, it is true that there have been a couple of Biden nominees who are just so over the top that even some Democrats couldn't support them. But rehabilitation is not a gigantic trick these days. All right, but
sure. And the main idea here, though, is what I think gets lost with a lot of folks, which I'm just trying to underline, is the fact that you have a massive change in several generations of U.S. policy. Okay, you want to change it? Make an argument. Go ahead. Let's have it out. Let's put the cards under the table and describe why you think this new arrangement will be better, why you believe empowering Iran is something that is in the U.S. national interest or in the interest of our allies, and let's talk about it. They knew in 2008, 2009 that this was going to be a total non-starter. The American people would not be on board for this, and that carries off into the present day. I think they've already forgotten how even that making arguments is an important function
exactly
of a democracy. I mean, they talk very in very pointed, beautiful terms about democracy, but at the end of the day, convincing your fellow Americans about large consequential changes in policy is, and doing it in the public square, doing it in the media, having that debate and not silencing your opponents. I mean, that is the definition of democracy.
So what's the role? So, all right. And so let me get a little conspiratorial here.
Sure.
What is the fact that China has made such a huge and successful investment in the United States government have to do with these changes? Could that be part of the answer?
Well, I think that's part of the answer. That's part of the answer really with everything. When you have such a big issue, when you have, the second largest economy in the world, the second greatest military power, all these, of course, have asterisks because we haven't yet really stress tested any of this. These are all numbers on a board that may or may not be meaningless, when it comes to actual power and projecting it. So yeah, I mean,
well, isn't the Ukraine situation a stress test, or is it because it's a little bit off center from the stress point that it's not quite a stress test?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a stress test of China.
Right.
It's definitely a stress test for the Russians, and I think at the end of the day, the Russians are coming up short. I think everyone concedes that they will be kind of militarily victorious. It's just a matter of how long this will take, and you know, it's not in their best interest at all. It's not in their interest at all to have a kind of long, protracted, bloody intervention in Ukraine. It's just it punctures the whatever myth of Russian military superiority that exists. Not only that, the longer it drags on, the more the world will come together and penalize Russia in far worse ways. So it's states from the beginning of time have understood that that if you can win quickly, it's better than if you can win slowly. For a whole host of reasons, and
especially in a time when everything is sped up.
Yes,
a week in 2022 is nothing like a week in 1962. Everything is being reported. Let me ask you something. Because of the information, I don't know if we're even really going to get to a censorship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Putative topic here. I think we're seeing something different from censorship. I'm not hearing of people getting dinged. Not nobody, but nobody I know, for what that's worth, getting dinged from social media in the Ukraine-Russia war context. What I am seeing is such a phenomenal uniformity of correct opinion that it has turned me into into quite a Ukraine skeptic. And of course, there's a lot of really, really stupid takes that, oh, so you like Russia. Oh, so you're in favor of Nazis. No. I'm trying to point out that there's moral ambiguity in this context, and that there are a lot of questions about Ukraine. And then when I see the same people, someone made a really good tweet about this, maybe a few people did, if the same people who swore to us about Russia and Trump, and the same people who swore to us about the vaccine, and the same people who swore to us about masking and lockdowns, are all immediately on board, and uniformly on board on Ukraine, that makes me suspicious, because these are people these are people who literally won't even acknowledge the facts of life, birds and bees. So give me some insight
it's even more it's even more ridiculous than that, because in almost all cases, the people who jumped into the Trump-Russia conspiracy theories the hardest are the very ones who are heralded as experts here on Russia and Ukraine. It's not an accident. You could say that you could say that this is a continuation of Russiagate. Right now you've got the same cast of characters. You've got a very similar type of moral panic going on, and the imperative to not use your brain when it comes to analysis, especially of motivations and things like that when it comes to Putin and when it comes to Russia. Even asking for motivations is heretical. Is as you said, it's heretical, it's suspect, it makes you pro Putin or whatever. Even figuring out what or trying to figure out, making a good faith effort to try to figure out what Russia's war aims are, is met with an avalanche of insanity. And look, I think it's purposeful. I think it's completely purposeful. I have maybe a darker view of this.
Share. I'm here for you.
So for the last, for at least the last decade in earnest, you've had in Washington, D.C., and when I say Washington, D.C., I mean everywhere from government to think tanks to media, and to the halls of Congress, and the what we call the deep state, the national security branch of the administrative state. You've got near unanimity when it comes to a desire to really a desire to go after Russia, and folks who are very, 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 very hawkish on Russia, and specifically hawkish on Ukraine. And this crowd in DC is so insular that even the slightest bit of let's say reality resistance is met with incomprehension and furor, and people just freak out from this. And you've got the situation where you've got Vindman, who is as partisan a Ukrainian nationalist as it gets,
and really in any other time period would have been tried for insubordination, and probably some violation of the national security laws. I mean,
sure, but even prior to that, the guy was there. The guy was in the room. His job was literally as the director or senior director for Ukraine, and in the U.S. government, in the National Security Council. Now, that's a big job. And to put that job in the hands of someone who is so emotionally invested in the topic, not even as a...
It's like putting Jonathan Pollard in charge of the Israel desk. I mean,
right.
You can agree or disagree with the point of view, but he's not the guy to give dispassionate advice to the president of the United States.
Right. And, up and down, I mean, he's certainly not the only one. I mean, he's the only, Ukrainian, but, some people like Fiona Hill and what's her name? The former ambassador Yankelovich or something, I'm forgetting how to pronounce her name. I mean, all of these people are kind of hardcore, partisans. And then it occurred to me when this whole thing was sort of winding up and getting started, that kind of fanatical support for Ukraine and fanatical opposition to Russia is something that is unique in Washington, D.C., which is it is shared by both political appointees and career diplomats.
Do they all have a piece of the action?
Which was really interesting. No, I mean, I think what it is I wrote a piece at my Substack at Late Republic Nonsense, kind of about this and how it formed. I think the basic gist of Ukraine is that Western oligarchs went and gobbled up large parts of Ukraine because it was cheap. It was not in Eastern Europe already by then. Poland and Hungary and places like this were expensive because they were, pretty much guaranteed they were part of Europe. And when a country gets into, quote unquote Europe, whether that means NATO or the EU or just kind of colloquially known as Europe, the prices go up because it's more valuable. And these folks thought. And
on the other hand, it's a more viable and interesting investment than Belarus, where the rates are cheap as well. Is this the one? The article, Ukraine and the NGO archipelago?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone head over to Late Republic Nonsense, read the article and subscribe. So I just wanted to say Belarus it's not even the Harlem of Asia Minor. Is this Asia?
Yeah, that's not going to be part of it. Belarus is not going to be part of Europe anytime soon.
Right. Okay.
But Ukraine has a chance, and the people who went in and invested a whole lot of money in buying that infrastructure and making and investing in Ukraine, they knew what it would take, and what it would take would be a West, led by the United States, but certainly not limited to it, a Western political establishment that was, that was determined to pull Ukraine towards the West. Now, I mean, I don't necessarily have a moral problem with that. The problem I have with that at the end of the day is it ignores the map. And, Ukraine and Russia have always been tied, aside from aside from the history. I mean, just look at the map. Russia is a great power. Russia will always be a great power. Either it will be, in ascent or in decline, but it's a fact of life. It's geographic reality. And any Russian government would see the encroachment of the West into, territory that it feels as if it's part of its natural sphere of influence as threatening. And I mean, that's the truth. I mean, we can talk about and vilify Putin, all we want, and I mean, God knows he deserves it. But the truth of the matter is, any Russian leader would be as alarmed as Putin is over the expansion of NATO. And it's, of course, it's more than just NATO. It's the idea of the West.
Well, and also, though, I mean, the corruption aspect is, I think, a big factor too, because if Ukraine becomes the Cuba of the 21st century, the Batista Cuba, where basically it was a corrupt outpost of American colonialism, which it was, but here it's actually official. The United States government and the people who own and operate it are also owning and operating it. Ukraine as a franchise, its government is a franchise. That's in a way even more troubling than NATO, because NATO is chess pieces on a board, and you understand, things are more or less as they appear. When you've got a maybe not hostile, but a rivalrous regime on your border, and your biggest rival, and with all the, like you said, all the emotional impact that the West and the United States in particular has for any Russian leader, any post-Soviet Russian leader, basically running it. That's just not going to be good for your interests. Imagine if it's, you don't have to talk about the Monroe Doctrine. It's just not healthy. It's not, I think it's remarkable, except that it's not remarkable, how there's just been no examination in the mainstream press of what the nature of this Ukraine regime is. Have you noticed, Dave, how the messaging and the style of almost everything the Ukrainians have done is right out of the old PLO playbook? I don't mean so much the new one, because the new one there's no PLO anymore, but maybe there is, but now outright violence and hatred are actually cool. But the old Yasser Arafat walking around in fatigues and, being, rebel chic kind of, I mean, I just keep seeing these notes being played, and they're just being lapped up just as they were in the 70s with Arafat.
Yes, I noticed that too, and it's interesting because I've remarked about. I mean, I first started to see it when Zelensky would show up, and I mean, this is kind of quieted down now, but for a while there, just about every 12 hours, he would have a fake story, and he would be promoting a fake, a fake Russian attack, or something. The details of which didn't matter, but they were debunked within minutes or hours. Of course, and the press would dutifully report it, and you even had such shamelessness. I mean, it reminded me exactly, as you said, of the Palestinians. You had such shamelessness. You even had mainstream media writing that, like, we know he's lying, but it's cool. This is kind of very 1990s Bill Clinton thing. Like, everybody lies, and in the service of in the service of getting what they want.
And it's war. And after all, didn't the
Right.
British try to trick FDR about, a plot in Latin America? All is fair in love and war, and he's fighting for survival. And by the way, don't you know Putin lies all the time?
Yes. So, I mean, I even went back and I watched my old friend Richard Landis's great Pallywood films, which were about this and which were about manufacturing narratives and, the great thought and effort that goes into, creating these things. And oftentimes they're completely fake, or they contain a tiny kernel of truth. And, it manifests itself in atrocity porn, and nobody wants to be the one to say, "Oh no, this is this is not true. This is all fake. This is all," because those people get slammed if there's even a hint of of reality to the story. But this has been Zelensky's shtick, from the Babin Yar bombing that actually did not occur, to the fake Russian plot to blow up the nuclear plant and the nuclear, so-called nuclear leakage that was coming out, that the IAEA had to totally shoot down within minutes.
And I don't know the reliability of these reports any more than I know the reliability of stuff that's coming out of official or unofficial Ukrainian sources. But one thing I'm hearing is that, for example, the troops were placed near are being placed near or even in installations, Palestinian style, precisely and why would you do that? Because it works really well.
The hospital story,
right?
The maternity wards story. Yeah, I mean, this is a classic one if you're familiar at all with the kind of Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I mean, this is exactly what happens. The maternity ward gets bombed, and there's one casualty. There's this one kind of applicable casualty. I mean, obviously one casualty is terrible, but the image that the Ukrainians are trying to project is one of mass genocidal violence on the part of the Russians.
And this works when you have when your adversary is already accepted as the bad guy. Okay, that's what happens. In other words, with Israel is the bad guy in the Middle East for everyone except those it's not. And Putin, as you say, in the American elite and in the media, for some reason, is a James Bond villain. I mean, he's just,
right. So why are they doing this? And this is an important point. Why are they doing this? Why are they pushing the most extreme propaganda? You have the story that he's, that Putin is crazy, that he's lost touch with reality, that he's he's medically compromised, he's gone insane, he's all these things, and absurdly enough, they're being put out exactly like Russiagate stories were put out, which is intelligence, Five Eyes intelligence sources say, leaking to the Daily Mail or something. And by the way, as an aside, the UK media has probably been the worst, far worse than the US media. The UK media has just been lapdogs of their intelligence establishment. I've never seen anything like it.
Wow.
I mean, nearly everything coming out of the UK press is just like, it's abominable propaganda. It's just laughable stuff. But the larger issue is this, which is why do it? So if you want to make, the effort to make Putin into someone who is unreasonable, who is the new Hitler, who is the personification of evil, who wants to, do a genocide in Ukraine and take over all of Europe. Like, what do you get from that? What you get from that is you convince the population that there is no peaceful settlement that is possible with this person. You get continued pounding of war drums. You get, you get into the position where the Ukrainians themselves may want to make a deal, but world global opinion is pushing them not to make a deal.
Right, right.
Yes. So that's the situation we find ourselves in today, which is that if tomorrow we wake up and there's a ceasefire or there's some kind of agreement that is, that is at all similar to Russia's demands on Ukraine, that are pretty much unchanged from the start, the whole world is going to turn around and say, wait a minute, we expected, valiant, bloodletting, war drama here. We expected you to fight to the last man. I think that's deeply cynical.
Yeah. Really, it's other people's, heroism that you're insisting on.
We're doing this. Well, we're doing all of this war porn. Everybody's changing their avatars to include the Ukrainian flag. We're pushing them to fight to the death, and here we are. We're creating an obstacle for them to make an eventual settlement. And at the end of the day, we don't have to live there. We don't give a damn what happens there at the end of the day. As much as we sentimentally feel like we do.
But it's Holocaust. But it's the Holocaust. But it's
right. So this is why there's a little tiny glimmer of hope in the avalanche of propaganda, because we saw Zelensky give a speech in front of the Knesset or piped into the Knesset, in which he did his usual over the top thing and compared the Ukraine war to the Holocaust and kind of whitewashed the history of Ukraine when it comes to its dealings with Jews and its slaughter of Jews throughout the Second World War. And a lot of folks in Israel said, hold on a minute. This is too much for us. This is completely absurd. And it was a little bit of a reality check that was needed. But it looks like it's working elsewhere in the world, which is troubling. Look, at the end of the day here, it's the Ukrainians that are going to have to make a settlement of some kind. They're going to have to live with Russia, their more powerful neighbor. When I say something like that, of course, the neocons come back, and they come back with the thing that they've been saying for the last, 15 years or 10 years or so, which is, no, we need regime change in Russia.
Right, exactly.
I don't even know what to say at that point.
Well, it's like it's the domino theory, but the dominoes have to go uphill.
Right.
And they're 6 inches apart from each other. It's so preposterous.
Imagine how blinkered and out of your mind you have to be to look at America in 2022 and think to yourself, you know what? I think we need to undertake. We need to forget about all of our internal divisions. I think we need to forget about the precarious and terrible state of our economy. I think we need to forget about the threat of China. But now we need to focus on regime change in Russia. Why? Because good versus evil. I think someone who is pushing that is just fundamentally unserious.
And Ukraine is an obvious good. Is an obvious good. And I've been putting screenshots of of people's tweets. The Nazi factor here. Nazi has become such a meaningless figure here, but except in the Ukraine context, there's nothing meaningless about it either historically, because of the well-established connection between Ukrainians and actual genocide, which and I'm a very, very big foe of group responsibility and group guilt and group punishment. But now let's look at 2022, and you've got this Azov battalion, which is essentially a neo-Nazi formation that is part of the Ukrainian government, and no one has even denied that. Has it been denied? Probably at some level, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. It's hard or impossible to, to deny. But here, I think we need to make a little distinction. Maybe it's useful to say Nazi, like capital N Nazi, meaning the actual Nazis, and like the actual historical National Socialists in in Germany and elsewhere, and
Of course,
come to think of it, in Ukraine today, and the colloquial Nazi lowercase n, that exists in the leftist imagination as a cudgel to use against all their enemies.
Well, that's exactly. See, so I just now, searching for screen content, I came up with Glenn Greenwald, who as usual is completely seeing things in an original fashion, and he has got these two screenshots here from the Times. The Azov group, openly neo-Nazi, and then another Ukraine's far right Azov battalion, and his comment is, in 2015 it was neo-Nazi. In the Times now it's far right, and as you see, he says all you have to do to lose your status as a Nazi is to fight on the side of the U.S. The fact of the matter is, probably the Azov guys are no friends of ours, and Majid Nawaz has been coming on. He has been utterly,
he's been talking about this, and
utterly unapologetic.
He was on Tucker last night, and I thought it was a good point that he made, which it says it reminds him of Syria, which is an excellent point, which is another issue that kind of inexplicably the neocons have been obsessed with, all out of proportion, for the last almost a decade now, or a decade now, which is, in Syria you've got Iran and the Russians fighting alongside Assad against against Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood. And all this is to say that there's this situation is not advantageous for us, to the extent only to the extent that both lose. But throughout the Syrian civil war, you had similar people coming out and saying, well, no, this is moderate Al-Qaeda, this is moderate al-Nusra, this is these are guys that we should support because they're fighting the greater enemy, and blah 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 blah. All of this is, but again, all of this is nonsense.
It's nonsense, and it also circles us back to the beginning, which is there is a vision out there which has never been the subject of any advocacy, and which inevitably is the product of some 1990s academic work that influences the foreign policy people who move into power in the first decade of the 21st century, and in the second decade of the 21st century became more senior, and eventually move into the White House. And but to a large extent, it seems, in other words, if to the extent that's the Saudi Arabia, dislodging Saudi Arabia was the motivation, it also seems to be stuck on a Saudi Arabia of 15 years ago and 20 years ago. And I don't want to be rose-colored over the nature of the Saudi Arabian, of life in Saudi Arabia today, but this is an outright ally. This is by far our best Arab friend in the world today. And that doesn't seem to move this crew at all.
Right. Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think there are a lot of folks who are, both left and right, who are, for their own reasons, are stuck in a Saudi Arabia of the past. People who are talking, when
talking about 9/11,
they're talking about 9/11. MBS was what, 9 years old, maybe or even younger. The Saudi Arabia today is far different than the Saudi Arabia of the past. in almost every way. But that's not, I don't even think that's the main point. The main point is, at the end of the day, again, look at the map. There will always be a Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia will always control, to a great extent, control the price of oil in the world. Oil is a thing that we need. A lot of people don't know this. I mean, it's really kind of basic stuff that most of the American people just are not aware of. But at the end of the day, why does Saudi Arabia control the price of oil? Well, it controls the price of oil because not only do they have a lot of it, they have a lot of it just below the surface of the ground, which means it's very, very cheap for them to bring it out of the ground. U.S. oil production, Russian oil production elsewhere in the world is more expensive to extract. What does that mean? That means that oil has to be at a certain price point for it to be even worth taking out of the ground, because it's so expensive.
I thought all you had to do was shoot it some food, and then up from the ground would come a bubbling ooze, or maybe that was just, for the Beverly Hillbillies, maybe.
Yeah, and people forget the role that the Saudis played in the Cold War. I mean, this was
forget it. I think very few people are aware of it.
Right? I mean, they don't even know. I mean, Reagan understood, and this was a very clear strategy articulated in the National Security Directive.
The AWACS sale, right?
That it was I have to ask our friend David Goldman, because he was actually intimately involved in this. But the Reagan administration realized that the Soviet economy basically ran only on oil, and it decided, we're going to bankrupt these guys, and we're going to do it by asking the Saudis to dramatically lower the price of oil, so that the Russians, can't make money because it costs them far too much to extract. Now, this worked. This worked like a charm. It was economic warfare of a kind of very sophisticated kind.
And how did Reagan convince the Saudis to do it? I guess the AWACS sale and other things like that, strategic or tactical concessions were part of that.
Sure, package. They had to make it worth the Saudis' while. On one hand, on the other hand, too, is this caused a recession in Texas. This, Reagan was not well liked in Texas because of this, because the price of oil crashing in Dallas specifically was a kind of local calamity. And Reagan didn't like it. He was, he felt terrible about it. But on one hand, you have the people in the oil industry in the U.S., and on the other hand, you have the larger goal, which is winning the Cold War against the Soviets. And I think he chose wisely.
I didn't forget any of this, Dave. I never knew it. You just taught me something, and I was.
Oh, really?
I
need to remember which directive it is. I'll go and I'll tweet it. I'm terrible with numbers, but it's a known thing. Peter Schweitzer writes compellingly about it in a book called Reagan's War.
The stuff Dave. The stuff and I've been pumping you. It's a pump, but you're like the Saudi Arabia of foreign affairs, because it's all right beneath the surface. I don't have to dig very deep, but we're coming up on 50 minutes, and it's just not fair to you or to people who want to say they listen to every episode, but they're sitting in the parking lot when their wives are wondering why they don't come in for dinner. So, fantastic discussion, Dave. It's great having you on. Great chatting with you, even when we're not having barbecue, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. Anything in particular going on that I should be telling people about besides Late Republic Nonsense, which everybody has to subscribe to?
No, everyone should subscribe to it. Thanks so much, Ron, for having me on. You're one of my favorite people in the whole political space.
Thank you.
A true original, and you're fearless. And
oh boy,
it's
that means I must have done some really stupid stuff that no one
Well, look, I mean, that's part of the deal. I think we all do that. I think part of, I mean, we spoke about this, part of what makes us, interesting or decent, to follow on Twitter, is that we just say what we think. And, at the end of the day, it's not studied. And that's it.
Uh-oh. Sorry about that. These days is not studied. You're saying, say it again. I don't know if you got that background noise.
No, I got it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think
that's what we're here for. That's who we are. And so goes it. My wife doesn't listen to my podcasts because she loves me and she wants to keep loving me. But so I can say something here, being an original, as you put it, saying really what you have to say is it is the road less taken. And, it comes at something of a cost, even if you remain employed, even if you aren't banned, you're not going to make it in the corporate world. You're not going to make it in big institutions. A lot of people are going to not want to take the risk of having squeaky wheels and loose cannons around, but we have each other. And maybe truth wins out a little bit along the way.
Exactly.
David, thank you so much.